Somewhere in southern Peru, spread across a desert so dry that rain falls less than 30 minutes per year, there are drawings that no human being was meant to see. A spider, 150 feet long, traced with a single unbroken line. A hummingbird with a wingspan wider than a Boeing 737. A monkey with a spiraling tail that curls across 300 feet of barren ground. Geometric lines, laser straight, running for miles across flat stone and sand without deviating by so much as a degree. There are over 1,500 of them. They cover an area of nearly 200 square miles. And here is the fact that has haunted archaeologists, pilots, mystics, and dreamers for almost a century. The people who made these drawings had no way of seeing them. They had no towers. They had no hills overlooking the plain. They had no aircraft, no balloons, no scaffolding tall enough to glimpse even the smallest figure in full. They carved images into the earth that could only be understood from the sky. And they did this at a time when no human being could reach the sky. For nearly 1,500 years, the drawings lay in silence. No empire recorded them, no traveler described them. The Spanish conquistadors marched within miles of them and never noticed. The lines survived because the desert itself is a vault. Almost no wind, almost no rain, almost no life. The earth holds what is drawn upon it, the way a museum holds a painting behind glass, except this museum has no visitors, and no lights, and no name. This is the story of the people who made those drawings. They are called the Nazca. They left no written language. They founded no empire. They conquered no foreign lands. They built no pyramids and no great walls. By every conventional measure of civilizational greatness, they should be a footnote. Instead, they created the largest and most mysterious artwork in the history of the human species. And then, they vanished. The desert kept their secret for a millennium and a half. The sky finally revealed it. And the answer to why they drew what they drew may be simpler and more heartbreaking than anyone expected. The coast of southern Peru is not a place that invites civilization. It is one of the driest environments on the planet, a narrow strip of land pressed between the Pacific Ocean to the west and the Andes Mountains to the east. The Atacama Desert, the driest non-polar desert on Earth, begins not far to the south. Rainfall in this region is measured not in inches per year, but in fractions of an inch per decade. There are weather stations in the Nazca Basin that have recorded zero measurable precipitation for spans of 20 years. And yet, water exists here. It exists because the Andes, rising to nearly 20,000 feet to the east, catch moisture from the Amazon basin on their far side. That moisture condenses, falls as rain and snow at high altitude, and feeds rivers that cut westward through the mountains toward the Pacific. These rivers, the Nazca, the Taruga, the Aja, the Tierras Blancas, and nearly a dozen others, carve narrow green valleys through the brown emptiness. For most of the year, many of them are dry, but beneath the surface, groundwater flows. It flows slowly, filtered through rock and gravel, sometimes only a few feet below the desert floor. If you know where to dig, you find life. If you do not, you find death. The margin between the two is, in some places, the depth of a man standing in a hole. This is the geography that shaped the Nazca. They did not choose this land because it was easy. They adapted to it because they had no other option. Their ancestors, part of the broader tradition known as the Paracas culture, had lived in this region since roughly 800 BC, concentrated on the Paracas Peninsula and in the Ica Valley to the north. The Paracas people were already remarkable. They produced textiles of extraordinary complexity, woven with up to 200 distinct colors of dyed cotton and camelid fiber, fabrics so fine that modern textile experts struggle to replicate them. They practiced skull surgery, a procedure called trepanation, boring holes into living skulls with obsidian blades, and their patients survived at a rate of nearly 80%, a success rate that European surgeons would not match until the late 19th century. But the Paracas were not the Nazca. Sometime around 200 BC, in the river valleys south of the Paracas heartland, a distinct cultural identity began to emerge. We do not know if this was a migration, a slow divergence, or a sudden break. The archaeological record does not speak clearly on the matter. What it does show is a shift. New styles of pottery, new burial practices, new settlement patterns spreading across the tributaries of the Rio Grande de Nazca basin. The people who emerged from this transition did not call themselves Nazca. That name comes from the modern town and the river. We do not know what name they used for themselves. Their language, likely a form of an early Andean tongue, was never written down. It is lost entirely. What we know of the Nazca comes from what they left in the ground: their pottery, their textiles, their bones, their buildings, and above all, their lines. The Nazca did not begin with monuments. They began with water. In a landscape where surface rivers ran dry for months at a time, the first problem was not art or religion or war. It was survival. And survival required access to the underground rivers that flowed invisibly beneath the desert. Their solution was extraordinary. They built a system of underground aqueducts called puquios, a word borrowed from Quechua, the language of the later Inca Empire. A puquio is not a simple well. It is an engineered tunnel, sometimes running for more than half a mile underground, tapping into the water table at a precise depth and angle, channeling groundwater through stone-lined passages to the surface where it could be collected in open reservoirs called cochas. The tunnels were reinforced with river cobblestones laid without mortar, and they included spiraling access points, wide funnel-shaped openings in the desert surface that allowed workers to descend for maintenance and that allowed wind to pressurize the system, pushing water forward through the channels. There are over 40 known puquios in the Nazca region. Some of them still function today, more than 500 years after they were built. Modern hydraulic engineers who have studied them describe the system as remarkably sophisticated, comparable in principle to the Qanat systems of ancient Persia, though developed entirely independently, separated by 10,000 miles of ocean and mountain and desert. The Nazca had no contact with Persia. They had no knowledge of Middle Eastern irrigation. They solved the same problem with the same elegant logic, driven by the same desperate need. How to bring water from where it hides to where people live. The puquios did more than sustain life. They made surplus possible. And surplus, in every civilization that has ever existed, is the engine of complexity. When not every person must spend every hour securing water and food, some people can specialize, some can make pottery, some can weave textiles, some can build temples, some can study the stars. The Nazca did all of these things, and they did them with a sophistication that defied their small numbers. At their peak, the entire Nazca population likely numbered no more than 25 Aruzunoran people, perhaps less, scattered across a dozen river valleys in settlements that rarely exceeded a few hundred inhabitants. For comparison, at the same time, Rome had over 1 million residents. The Han Dynasty capital of Chang'an housed 400,000. The Nazca were, by the standards of their era, a tiny civilization in a forgotten corner of the world. And yet, their pottery alone would justify their place in history. Nazca ceramics are among the most technically accomplished and visually striking of any pre-Columbian culture. They used a technique called slip painting, applying pigments made from mineral oxides before firing, which produced colors of extraordinary vibrancy. 12 or more distinct hues on a single vessel, including reds, whites, blacks, oranges, grays, violets, and browns. The imagery on these pots is a window into a world we cannot otherwise see. Mythical beings with cat whiskers and serpent tongues, warriors carrying trophy heads, killer whales with human arms, hummingbirds, spiders, monkeys, foxes. The same figures, it turns out, that would later appear on the desert floor hundreds of feet across. But the pottery was private. A pot fits in your hands. The lines on the desert were something else entirely. The Pampa, the flat desert plateau between the Nazca and Ingenio river valleys, is a canvas unlike anything else on Earth. Its surface is covered with a layer of dark iron oxide pebbles, a natural pavement formed over millions of years. Beneath this dark layer lies lighter-colored ground, pale yellow and cream. To make a line, you need only remove the dark stones and expose the light earth beneath. The contrast is visible. The process is simple. A single person with a stick and a bag could trace a line across the Pampa in a matter of hours. But the Nazca did not trace simple lines. They traced enormous figures. The hummingbird measures 300 feet from beak to tail. The spider stretches 150 feet. The condor spans 440 feet. The so-called astronaut, a humanoid figure etched into a hillside, stands 100 feet tall. And beyond the figurative geoglyphs, which number roughly 70, there are over 900 geometric shapes. Triangles, trapezoids, spirals, and rectangles. Some of them covering areas larger than football fields, and more than 800 straight lines, some running unbroken for nearly 6 miles across the flat desert surface. How did they do it? The answer, determined through decades of experimental archaeology, is deceptively simple. They used wooden stakes, cord, and careful planning. A small model, perhaps drawn on a piece of textile or scratched onto a pottery shard, could be scaled up using a grid system. Teams of workers, perhaps a few dozen, would clear stones along predetermined paths, piling them in low borders on either side. The work was labor-intensive, but not technically impossible. A team of 20 people could complete a medium-sized figure in approximately 10 days. The precision is remarkable but explicable. Straight lines can be maintained over long distances by sighting between stakes, and curves can be plotted with a cord anchored to a central point. The question that remains is not how, it is why. And here, the Nazca refuse to give us a clean answer. The most enduring theory connects the lines to water. This was the insight of an American historian named Paul Kosok, who first flew over the Pampa in a small aircraft in 1939 and saw the lines from above. On the evening of June 22nd, the winter solstice in the southern hemisphere, Kosok watched from the ground as the setting sun aligned precisely with the end of one of the long, straight lines. He called the Pampa the largest astronomy book in the world. But later, research complicated his hypothesis. Some lines do align with solstice or equinox positions of the sun and moon, but many do not. Statistical analysis shows that the astronomical alignments are no more frequent than what chance alone would produce. Others proposed that the lines were ceremonial pathways, walked during religious processions. This idea gained strength from a discovery. Along many of the lines and inside many of the geometric shapes, archaeologists found broken pottery, seashells, and food remains, offerings left deliberately. The lines were not simply looked at, they were used. People walked them. But the theory that has gained the most support in recent decades connects the lines to the one resource the Nazca needed above all others: water. Many of the straight lines point toward the mountains, toward the source of the underground rivers. Many of the geometric shapes align with river valleys and fault lines where groundwater flows. The animal figures, the spider, the hummingbird, the monkey, are associated in Andean cosmology with rain, fertility, and the mountains. The geoglyphs may have been prayers drawn on the earth at a scale the gods could read. Not art for human eyes, art for divine ones. This is where Maria Reiche enters the story. She arrived in Peru in 1932, a young German mathematician fleeing a continent sliding toward war. She had studied mathematics and astronomy in Hamburg and Dresden, and she came to Peru to work as a governess and translator. In 1940, she met Paul Kosok, who showed her his photographs of the lines. She was 37 years old. She would spend the next 58 years of her life in the desert. Reiche devoted herself to the Nazca lines with a dedication that borders on the incomprehensible. She lived in a small house at the edge of the pampa. For years, she slept in a tent beside the lines themselves. She measured them with tape and compass. She swept them with a broom, a common household broom, clearing dust and debris from the figures to keep them visible. She mapped hundreds of lines, calculated their astronomical orientations, and published her findings in a book she paid for herself because no academic press would take it. She fought against the Peruvian government when they planned to run an irrigation canal across the pampa. She fought against tourists who drove cars across the desert surface. She fought against time, against indifference, against the academic establishment that dismissed her as an eccentric. She was not eccentric. She was right about the most important thing. The lines mattered, and they had to be protected. In 1994, largely because of her decades of advocacy, the Nazca lines were designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Reiche lived to see it. She died in 1998 at the age of 95 in the city of Nazca. She is buried there. The people of the town, the descendants of the civilization whose art she saved, called her the Lady of the Lines. But what Reiche could not save was the civilization that made the lines. Because by the time the last geoglyphs were drawn on the pampa, the Nazca were already destroying the only thing that kept them alive. The huarango tree, Prosopis limensis, is native to the coastal deserts of Peru. It is a deep-rooted legume, a nitrogen fixer, and its roots can reach groundwater 50 or more feet below the surface. In a desert environment, the huarango is not merely a tree. It is an anchor. Its roots stabilize the soil. Its canopy provides shade that reduces evaporation. Its fallen leaves create a layer of organic matter that retains moisture and supports a micro-ecosystem of insects, birds, and small animals. A forest of huarango trees does not simply grow on the desert. It holds the desert back. The Nazca cut them down. They cut them for fuel. They cut them for construction timber. They cut them to clear land for agriculture as their population grew, and the demand for food exceeded what the narrow river valleys could provide naturally. Over the centuries, the huarango woodlands of the Nazca Basin were reduced from dense riparian forests to scattered remnants. And as the trees disappeared, the desert advanced. Without root systems to stabilize the floodplain, seasonal rains from the mountains, when they came, hit bare earth and carved destructive gullies instead of soaking into the ground. Without canopy cover, evaporation rates increased. The water table began to drop. The puquios, designed to tap water at a specific depth, began to run dry. And then El Nino arrived. El Nino, the periodic warming of Pacific Ocean surface temperatures off the coast of South America, triggers dramatic shifts in weather patterns across the region. In the Nazca Basin, El Nino events bring catastrophic flooding, sudden walls of water pouring down from the mountains through valleys stripped of vegetation. Between approximately AD 500 and 600, paleoclimate records show a series of intense El Nino events, more frequent and more severe than those of the preceding centuries. The Nazca, who had survived in their desert for 700 years by mastering water, now faced a paradox of water. Too much of it in violent bursts, too little of it in the long droughts between. The floods tore through settlements. They destroyed irrigation channels. They buried agricultural fields under layers of sand and gravel. And in the droughts that followed, the depleted water table could no longer sustain the puquios. The system that had made civilization possible in this impossible landscape began to fail. The archaeological evidence of the collapse is visible at Cahuachi, the greatest Nazca ceremonial center. Cahuachi sits in the Nazca Valley, roughly 28 miles inland from the coast. It was not a city in the conventional sense. Very few people lived there permanently. It was a pilgrimage site, a place of ritual, a nexus of religious power, spread across more than 370 acres of desert, making it one of the largest adobe ceremonial complexes in the ancient Americas. At its height, around AD 1 to 300, Kawachi contained over 40 mounds, temples and plazas, built from millions of sun-dried mud bricks, decorated with colorful friezes and oriented toward the surrounding mountains and the underground water sources beneath them. Around AD 400, the Nazca began to dismantle Kawachi. Not suddenly, not violently, deliberately. They buried the temples. They filled rooms with sand and clay. They sealed doorways. They placed offerings, pottery, textiles, trophy heads in the fill, as though giving the buildings a funeral. The act was ritual, not destructive. They were not destroying Kawachi. They were closing it, returning it to the earth. Why they did this is debated. Some archaeologists believe the closure of Kawachi reflects a loss of faith, a recognition that the rituals performed there had failed to bring rain, failed to stop the floods, failed to protect the people. Others suggest it was a deliberate act of renewal, closing one sacred space to open another, a practice known in other Andean cultures. Whatever the reason, the closure of Kawachi marks the beginning of the end. After AD 400, the Nazca culture enters its final phase. Settlement patterns fragment, population declines, pottery styles become less elaborate. The trophy head cult, a practice in which enemies or revered ancestors were decapitated and their heads preserved and carried as ritual objects, intensifies, possibly reflecting increased warfare between communities competing for dwindling resources. By AD 600, the Nazca were no longer the Nazca. The Wari Empire, expanding from its capital in the highlands near modern Ayacucho, approximately 300 miles to the north, extended its influence over the coastal valleys. The Wari did not annihilate the Nazca. They absorbed them. Wari administrative centers appeared in the old Nazca valleys. Wari pottery styles replaced Nazca ones. Wari textile patterns, Wari architectural forms, Wari religious iconography gradually overlaid the older traditions until the distinct identity of the Nazca dissolved into a broader, highland-dominated culture. There was no final battle, no last king defeated, no capital burned. The Nazca simply faded. Their language, never written, was forgotten. Their name, unknown to them, was assigned later by outsiders. Their settlements, built of mud and cane and adobe, melted back into the desert, and the lines on the pampa lay in silence. For 300 years, nobody looked up. The rediscovery of the Nazca lines is itself a story of accident and obsession. Peruvian archaeologist Toribio Mejia Gespe first noted the lines from nearby foothills in 1927, but he interpreted them as remnants of ancient roads or irrigation channels. It was Kosuk's 1939 overflight that transformed understanding. From the air, the lines were suddenly, unmistakably. Art Kosuk published his findings, brought Reiche into the work, and a global fascination began that has never ended. In 1968, Erich von Daniken published Chariots of the Gods, a book that proposed the Nazca lines were landing strips for alien spacecraft. The theory is nonsense. It has no archaeological support. It is contradicted by every piece of physical evidence, but it sold millions of copies and permanently embedded the Nazca lines in popular culture as objects of mystery. The irony is bitter. The actual story of the Nazca, a small desert people who mastered underground water, created some of the most beautiful pottery on earth, drew prayers the size of city blocks for gods they could not prove existed, and then destroyed themselves by cutting down their own forests, is far more extraordinary than any fiction about extraterrestrial visitors. The truth does not need aliens. The truth has humans in it, and that is enough. Today, the Nazca lines are monitored by satellite. Drones fly over the pampa, mapping new figures that were invisible even from low aircraft. In 2019 and 2020, Japanese researchers from Yamagata University announced the discovery of over 140 previously unknown geoglyphs, many of them smaller and older than the famous figures, depicting cats, snakes, and human forms. The pampa is still revealing its secrets. We have not found them all. The puquios still carry water. Some of them irrigate small farms in the Nazca Valley to this day, flowing through tunnels built before the Roman Empire fell, before Islam was founded, before the first Viking ship touched the Atlantic. They are among the oldest, continuously functioning hydraulic structures on Earth. And the environmental lesson of the Nazca reverberates with a clarity that would be poetic if it were not so blunt. A civilization that depended on a fragile desert ecosystem destroyed the trees that held that ecosystem together. When the climate shifted, as climates do, they had no buffer. Their engineering could not compensate for the loss of the natural systems that engineering had been designed to complement, not replace. The puquios were brilliant, but they could not work without the aquifer. The aquifer could not recharge without the forests. The forests could not survive the axes. Cause and effect, separated by decades, invisible until the damage was irreversible. We know this story. We are living inside a version of it now. The Nazca drew their largest, most ambitious figures during the final centuries of their civilization, between roughly AD 400 and 600, the same period in which the environmental collapse was accelerating. Some archaeologists interpret this as desperation, louder prayers to gods who were no longer answering. Others see it as defiance, a refusal to accept decline, a doubling down on meaning in the face of meaninglessness. We do not know which interpretation is correct. Perhaps both are true. Perhaps they are the same thing. What remains is what has always remained. The desert, the stones, the pale earth beneath them. A spider drawn by hands that have been dust for 400 years, lying in a silence so complete that you can hear your own heartbeat if you stand beside it, tracing a shape that was never meant for your eyes. A prayer written on the skin of the world in a language that has no words, only lines, only curves, only the patient, enormous, impossible ambition of a people who believed that if they drew large enough, something above them would see. No one above them saw. But the lines survived. They survived the floods. They survived the droughts. They survived the Wari, the Inca, the Spanish, the treasure hunters, the highway builders, the conspiracy theorists, and the indifference of centuries. They survived because the desert does not forget. It does not rain. It does not blow. It holds. Every drawing on that pampa is a message in a bottle, thrown not into the sea, but into the sky, and it took 500 years to arrive. When Paul Kosuk looked down from his small plane in 1939, he saw what no Nazca ever saw, their own work, complete, whole, still perfect. He became the eyes they never had. And Maria Reiche became the hands that kept the message legible, sweeping dust from a hummingbird's wing with a broom, year after year, decade after decade, alone in a desert that gave nothing back except the quiet certainty that the lines were worth saving. They were worth saving. Somewhere beneath the surface of the Nazca Desert, water still moves through tunnels built before Christ was born. Somewhere on the surface, a spider 150 feet long waits for eyes that took 15 centuries to arrive. And somewhere in the space between the water below and the drawings above, there is a civilization that had no writing, no empire, no army, no gold, and no way to see its own greatest creation. And yet it endured, not in stone, not in conquest, not in power. In lines drawn on a desert floor, for an audience that did not exist, in a faith so absolute that it did not require proof. You have never been to the Pampa. But the Pampa has something to say to you. It says that the most permanent things we make are sometimes the things we never intended anyone to see. It says that what survives is not always what was built to last, but what was built with meaning. It says that a people who vanished 14 centuries ago are still, in the only way that matters, drawing. The desert does not forget, and now neither will you.